The following BLTV program is brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. Please enjoy.
Welcome to Learn About Law. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law, and today we're going to talk about Medicaid law in Illinois. We're going to talk about who might be eligible for it, and we're going to go into some detail about Medicaid for long-term care planning and the 5-year look-back period. Let's talk about what Medicaid is first. Medicaid is a government health insurance program that's intended for needy or low-income adults. There's about 5 categories of people that may be able to receive Medicaid, and those are low-income adults, the elderly, disabled adults, blind adults and children, and pregnant women. So if you fall into one of those categories, you may be eligible for Medicaid, but a lot of the time your income or assets, or both actually, income and assets have to be below a certain threshold. And this is particularly the case when you're applying for Medicaid for the purpose of long-term care. So a lot of elderly people need to be in long-term care for a considerable period near the end of their lives. It might be a year, it might be 5 years, but either way, it's very expensive. And a lot of people use Medicaid in order to pay for this long-term care. But the rule is that your income, again, has to be below a certain level, and your assets have to be below a certain level in order to qualify for Medicaid. So you have to have spent down your own assets to pay for the long-term care before Medicaid will kick in. Now, this leads us to the 5-year look-back rule. So a lot of people will say, well, can I transfer my home or some of my assets to my loved ones and then apply for Medicaid? Well, when you apply for Medicaid, the government will basically look at transfers that you've made within 5 years prior to applying for Medicaid to make sure that they are all allowable. If you've made large unallowable transfers, then a penalty period kicks in where for a certain number of years based on the dollar amount of the transfers, you're not going to be eligible to apply for Medicaid, and that puts you in a bad spot. So that's why it's important to do long-term care planning and estate planning prior to 5 years before you're going to need to actually apply for Medicaid. So the types of exceptions to this transfer rule where you can't transfer your assets out of your basically estate for 5 years prior to applying for Medicaid include certain transfers to your spouse, transfers to disabled children or their trusts, certain transfers to children of yours that are caregivers, and payments of your debts or ongoing bills. So those types of transfers are allowed in the 5-year period prior to applying for Medicaid. Transfers that are not exempt from this 5-year look back include any gift you're going to make. So if you're going to gift your house to your child and they're not a caregiver child, that will delay your ability to apply for Medicaid. If you make large cash gifts to your children, that'll delay your ability to apply for Medicaid if it's done 5 years prior to applying. Any transfers lacking documentation. So if you've made an appropriate transfer that normally wouldn't delay the application for Medicaid, if you don't have it properly documented and the person auditing you sees that $10,000 came out of your account and you don't have a documentation for it, even if it was appropriate, that might delay your eligibility for Medicaid. And third is irrevocable trust. So a lot of people think that they can just transfer their home or their other assets into an irrevocable trust within 5 years, and that will allow them to avoid Medicaid eligibility problems. They don't. Irrevocable trusts, while they have many uses, transfers to irrevocable trusts are not exempt from the 5-year look-back period. So the bottom line is that if you can, plan for long-term care at least 5 years before you're going to need it, because there are certain things you can do with an estate plan to get your assets to your children or make sure that you can live in your home for the rest of your life and still qualify for long-term care, but you have to plan for those 5 years in advance. Once we get within that 5-year window, there's not a whole lot you can do to make those transfers, but it's worth talking to an attorney to see if some of the transfers you might want to make might be exempt. So thanks so much for listening. If you have questions, this is a tricky topic. We have a lot of articles and videos at learn-about-law.com, but if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section, and we'll try to answer them or do an article about it. And please subscribe to our YouTube station. Thanks.
Thanks so much for watching our video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Click the subscribe button for new videos every week, and download and review us on iTunes. Visit learn-about-law.com for other legal-related articles and videos. Visit our business podcast and video blog, seizeyourbusiness.com, and visit Making Real Estate Fun for real estate videos and podcasts. Call us at 630-324-6666 for a free consultation.